Now, Dublin police have cleared hundreds of migrants from a makeshift campsite in the centre of Dublin on Sunday. Around 200 asylum seekers were moved from the camp outside of a government office to a new site outside of the Irish capital. Now, the asylum seekers have been camping outside the International Protection Office on Mount Street for months, awaiting their applications for international protection to be processed. Well, joining me now to discuss this is former Labour advisor Kevin Moore. Kevin, welcome to the show. Astonishing scenes. It looked like a sort of social cleansing. Bulldozers taking these tents, putting them into the back of garbage trucks, moving these men, ferrying them out of town on coaches 20 kilometres away so they didn't spoil the St Patrick's Day parade pictures. But now they're all traipsing back into Dublin, Kevin, and worse, the world's media is watching. What the hell is going on?
It's a bit of a shambles in Dublin. There are several things going on. I mean, what happened over the weekend, and I saw footage of this, somebody walked along the whole length of this kind of, we would have called these cardboard cities, I guess, in the 80s, but the kind of these pop-up tents that people have got, one after the other, after the other, after the other. A lot of them asylum seekers that are in Ireland. The Irish government doesn't have the capacity to deal with the numbers of migrants that it's getting, and rather than do something about the supply that it's getting, it just keeps letting these people come in and doesn't have anywhere to put them, and it's causing a major problem in Irish society. We've seen lots of disturbances, lots of protests, some buildings being burnt that were earmarked to put asylum seekers in. Now, this is a very febrile situation in Ireland, and it stems from the fact, two things. One, that the housing market in Ireland is completely out of control. So over the last decade, for example, wages have grown about 27%, house prices have grown about 75%, and rents 90%. It's a really difficult situation, and it reflects actually the strength of the Irish economy. The Irish economy is booming, but supply and demand in the housing market isn't kept pace, and the government's frankly asleep on the watch and not doing very much about it. And it also reflects what's happening is that Ireland's political elite and some of its media elite as well are quite happy to allow this situation to continue, to sort of burnish their liberal credentials, because some of the leading lights in the Irish government, frankly, have got their eyes on big international jobs. So they're out there writing checks that then the Irish people are expected to pay. And it's this massive disconnect between the political elite at the top of this current government, which is led by the two old parties of Irish politics, Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil. Leo Varadkar, people may be familiar with, Micheál Martin as well as the leader of Fianna Fáil. You know, they're looking past Irish politics and for a big international job. That's what's going on. And they, as I say, they are going around the place making commitments that Ireland cannot deliver sustainably. And that's the nub of the problem.
And meanwhile, Kevin, anybody who objects is called far-right or racist. There have been large-scale protests in and around Dublin and nationwide about this fact. We've seen outbreaks of violence, of course, in Dublin. We saw police cars set fire to. After that, multiple stabbing a few months ago. See those pictures on our screen now. The question is, Kevin, if we have a political class in Ireland completely out of touch with the working classes, with the people who are affected, who can't get a house, what does that create? Does it create a void for something new?
It does. I mean, it's very interesting to look at the opinion polls in Irish politics, which for the last 4 years has had Sinn Féin top the pops. They won the actual popular vote in the last general election in February 2020, and it's very likely there's got to be an Irish general election in the course of the next year, a bit like we have, of course, in Britain. It's very likely that Sinn Féin features as part of that next government because they've got radical proposals on housing. It's not really anything to do with any other issue that Sinn Féin may be familiar to voters about. It's really about housing. It's way past a problem for the Irish working class. It's a problem for the Irish middle class. It's a problem for the Irish professional class. Everybody is feeling this problem. And the bizarre thing is that the Irish government, knowing that it's got this problem, could do something about it. The Irish public finances are in rude health at the moment, so much so that the talk in Dublin is of Ireland creating a sovereign wealth fund. It's got so much money from corporation tax receipts, it doesn't know what to do with it. So it could fix this problem very easily. But the trouble is, Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael, the two old corrupt parties of Irish politics, are sustained by the class of people that have got all these houses that are renting them out and making an absolute fortune. So there is no interest to address this problem. But at the same time, you're right. There is no Irish far right, in effect. There are some right-wing people, clearly. But when I look at these protests outside centres that have been designated to dump 50 asylum seekers in next to a children's nursery or whatever, no thought gone into it whatsoever. The people leading these protests are just ordinary people, mainly women. They're sat around a little campfire in deck chairs, passing a thermos flask around with an Irish flag and playing Irish folk songs. This is not swastikas and skinheads. This idea that all these people are, troglodytes and political extremists, it just isn't true. They are people who are profoundly fed up because their government is letting them down.
Superb stuff. Kevin Moore, breath of fresh air, former Labour advisor and an expert on the geopolitical scene in Ireland. It's always a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you very much for joining us today.